Hi, everyone. Today, I hope you have your flashlight ready because we're going to go into the darkness and we're going to talk about something I find interesting called your shadow self. And our guest has been here before. She's wonderful. I love her, Martha Creek. And Martha, how are you?
Glad to be here and keep my flashlight on and encouraging everybody else too. Okay.
Yes. And you have that inner light you can use too. So, in a lot of the new age, we call it new age spirituality. I don't know what else you could call it, but the change in thinking about God and spiritual things, sometimes they talk about the shadow self. And the first time I heard that, I had no idea what they're talking about. But basically, I think, Martha, it's the hidden, repressed, and unresolved parts of your being. Is that close?
Yeah. Well, depending on who you ask, they'll describe it differently, but that's how I describe it.
Okay.
Mimi, it's like all the parts of ourselves that are actually part of ourself that have been suppressed, depressed, denied, disowned, fragmented, exiled, whatever word you want to give it, in pretense that they're not there, that it's not there, to exclude it in some way.
And a lot of it is from trauma or resentments and other aspects of ourself that we would rather not think about or depending, what it is. I think that's a reason why myself, I did a lot of psychotherapy and counseling to work on those things because, there was anger and resentment that I was like pushing down, like hide it, trying to hide it, forget it was there, right? So tell us a little bit, especially for novices, what is the shadow side of spirituality?
Well, anything that we have disowned, excluded and said, go away, anything we resist, any part of our being that has not been met with some understanding, nurtured, cared for, integrated. So any part of us that we have disintegrated in some way.
Yeah,
And with that, though, becomes all of the belief system that goes around that. So if we go out in the world, we secretly believe, and not so secretly, that there's something wrong with us. I'm flawed, I'm faulty in some way. Then the mind goes out and gathers evidence to support that already drawn conclusion.
yeah,
So
that's
then
that's what we
we're
do.
going to have experiences and relationships that continue to heap on that. So a self-fulfilling prophecy of
Yes,
whatever the core, unquestioned, core traumatic informed beliefs are, then that creates what was one incident in some cases, or some incidences, some situations. A thought occurred, we interpreted the thought, and it grew into a belief system, which then
yes,
grows into a paradigm, into a worldview, into then bringing more and more experience of that to us because of we already believe that this is true. So,
sure.
beginning, there was the conclusion.
Yeah, because in my situation, I totally believe the fact that I didn't have nurturing parents. I might have an unemotionally demonstrative mother. She never kissed or hugged us, which is strange. An alcoholic father. And I was also made to think that I wasn't good enough. And between all of that and genetics and whatever else might be involved, um, I went out into the world with no coping skills, and I was drawn to the very men that were like my father and mother. They were not fully developed emotional intelligence or any of that or spiritual. And so, yeah, it took me, I was in that cycle for half my life. So, what, when you're going to do shadow work, what does that actually mean?
Well, it depends on how deep this is and how much has been done before. So there's no formula for doing shadow work. Because what is in my psyche, what is deeply held in my psyche, is not the same as other people experience. So somebody else could have had trauma over raping, robbing, pillaging, God knows what. Others didn't have that same physical trauma, and they're still in some level of trauma because they didn't feel nurtured, didn't feel like they belong, didn't feel safe in the households they were in, although something may not have actually happened physically, beatings and beltings and whatever, that they still didn't feel safe there, emotionally safe.
Yeah.
And whatever then is there to be tended to. So I don't have any advice about how to deal with shadow work other than find some approach, therapists, coaches, counselors, clergy, somebody trained in some aspects of psychology or pastoral care or something that can witness you and all of us and all of our humanness and all of this that is in there, that we do not have to do it alone.
Exactly. And I had dealt with my abuse, trauma, unpleasant situations with alcohol. So I became an alcoholic, which I never thought I was because I was very functional. I was one of those functional alcoholics. And when I finally got sober, I was introduced to counseling and talk therapy. And not only by going to a psychologist, but AA meetings is talk therapy. So I was able to feel safe enough in both of those places to open up and talk about those parts of myself that I had been repressing and even hiding from myself. So subconsciously I had things that were undesirable that I had
Well, the
pushed.
most of it, I believe, that's right. I believe the most of it is subconscious or in the unconscious. It's been so disowned and turned away from. So in layman's terms, it's like the parts of us that we do not want to acknowledge,
Right.
that we don't want to acknowledge that these are parts of us. It also is important in shadow work for me and for others that I've witnessed to know that there is a counterweight to this persona, and that it is absolutely then essential that the shadow self is seen as integral to our experience, to our world. So it's not a problem. It's not something to be taken out. It's not something to be mad at or to try to overcome, but something to integrate. So the shadow self has its own values, its own benefits to us. And to the degree that a person, can gain a better understanding of ourselves and what put this in the shadow aspect of ourselves, we absolutely hold a potential then and an empowerment to become much more balanced in our lives, in working with our shadow selves, and to be able to look more courageously at these formerly disowned parts of ourselves instead of trying to keep a big giant ball underwater, which cannot be done after some period of time, including addictions and using substances and all matters of other behaviors to do our best to try to bring some ease and comfort to it that is not sustainable. So in the program, you would hear there wasn't enough alcohol. There's not enough alcohol in the world
Right.
to
Right.
keep bay. There's not enough drugs in the world. There's not enough Cheetos in the world. There's not enough chocolate in the world to keep this aspects of ourselves pushed down, suppressed, and depressed for long. So it's, for me, it's not a question of if we'll do this work, just when.
Yeah. I'm going to go into that next. First, a funny story about goes with what you said about there's not enough alcohol. My one grandson, I think he was about 9 or 10, and we were out with the whole family. It was a big deal, and a couple people ordered alcoholic drinks, and of course, me and my husband did not. And he said to me, Nana, you don't drink, do you? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, why? And I said, well, I'll tell you why. Now he's only a little boy. I said, when you're born, you're allowed to have this amount of alcohol in your life. And Nana drank all hers. And he loved that. He just thought that was terrific, but it was kind of true. And what I wanted to go into too is somebody that doesn't know anything about this. How do they realize that they have a shadow side? Like, what kind of thinking should prompt them to look at that?
Well, people like you and me are of an open mindset, a growth mindset. We're into learning, to evolution, to growing. Others are not. According to psychology, even 80% of the species of humans are in a more fixed mindset. So they're not in the same kind of energy as we are of growth mindedness, of listening to a podcast, for example, or participating in one or
Right.
something like that. So for me, it's important to know, just because I'm about this and looking at and eager to integrate the shadow aspect of myself, not to confuse it as the majority of others are not. So they may go all the way to the grave with very little interest in this. And so be it. There's reasons for that too.
Yeah.
I have been prompted over the years to look at things that I have judged, what I have judged, who I blame and what I blame them for. Questions like, who's the matter with me? Who is the matter with me is reflecting to me the aspects of myself that I won't acknowledge. So whatever I judge, I have. If I spot it, I've got it.
Yeah.
So anything I hate, so to speak. And one
Yeah.
of my friends that just left here, actually, that's one of her phrases: be careful what you hate, it'll show up at your table. And I say it as, be careful what you hate, it'll show up on your plate.
Yeah.
So this is a part of, then I'm proactive to look at this. So I use all matters of work over the years: Hoffman Institute, mystery schools, journaling, page writing, anger work, holotropic breath work,
Yeah.
imaging, journaling, everything known to creation. I've explored to some degree to bring anything that's in my shadow out into light, to
Yeah.
integrate whatever's in the shadow, that it's not fragmented, that it is integrated, not disintegrated. And prompts around, I'm not okay because. What I want in this situation is, what they should do is, what I need them to do is, I don't want to ever feel blank again. I don't want to ever feel rejected, shamed, blamed, guilty. Things I don't want. What do I want? What do I not want? What do I need? What is it I don't need? What they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. These are prompts right out of the work of Byron Katie, which is considered cognitive behavioral therapy, to look at everything that we're judging outside of ourselves is also represented by an aspect of ourselves that we're judging,
Yeah.
and primarily unconsciously. So
Yes.
everything I'm seeing in the external is mirroring back to me a piece of myself, a part of myself.
Yeah.
And that I think the most valuable thing for me has been in this Carl Jung and his psychology, his approach included not to make the shadow wrong.
Yeah.
It's not a negative aspect of us, or so that we're not as shameful about it or guilty for it, that it is a part of our wholeness. It is
Right.
included in our wholeness. It is an important, and I say even for me, vital part of my psyche. And it is to be met with some understanding, with some compassion, with a greater sense of calm than I've been able to have about it before, connecting with all the parts. And over time, then I've learned and witnessed others learning how to manage the impulses of the disowned, the impulses of the psyche, the impulses of the shadow, such as rage and anger and greed and other things and not call it names and not make it negative and not make it bad and not make it wrong. But this is included in my whole being. This is a part of my human learning processes.
Yeah.
And it is very, very scary. Pull back the cover and see what's under here. Just like we turn over a log in the woods or a rock in the woods and there's creepy crawlers under there.
Yeah.
And whatever has been living in the darkness. And it's like that can be very, very scary when we're looking into our own underbelly, into our own underworld. It can be very, very frightening, which is why I encourage somebody to have a witness. And in the program, that's a sponsor, somebody to do that can represent a sponsor role for you, or somebody that's a witness for it.
Yes,
So
perfect, perfect. Yeah, perfect segue. I'm going to stop you there because I think it's a great thing that there are 12-step programs and that AA came about because whatever way they get there, you say grudge, a nudge, or a judge, whatever way you get there. I know when I was handed the big book, I was like in awe. I was like, oh my God. I wish I had this book when I was 20, but I probably wasn't ready for it when I was 20. And they do that reflection and looking at yourself and listing your resentments. So that is kind of shadow work right there. Even if it's just 101, it's a beginning. And everybody isn't like us that's open to it. Some people are offered that gift and given the tools and they don't use them, or they use them for a while and then they stop and they go back, But I remember going to a psychiatrist after rehab, etc., because I was going to do counseling, because I also had depression and panic disorder that needed to be looked at, which had to do with past issues and things, my shadow work, which I didn't call it that then. And he gave me a book to read called Many Masters, Many Lives, Many Masters, Many Masters, Many Lives, something like that. I don't know if you heard about it. And it was actually about people that had lived more than one life. And I really was amazed as a psychiatrist that he gave me that book, because it was, not the scientific type thinking. It was more quantum physics or, spiritual quantum physics. But now I realize that there's so many things we don't know and that we need to learn that affect us and therefore affect the whole world. So looking into yourself and getting more open helps, in a way, has a domino effect or the butterfly effect. Do you know where I'm going with this, right?
Well, you mean that there is a momentum to it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
A lot of women. I sponsored a lot of women in the last 30 some years. And I hear from many of them that are still sober. I get cards on their anniversaries and mine, AA, saying that I changed their life. Well, I didn't change their life. The 12 steps changed their life, And the one thing in the big book in the beginning, this is what I really wanted to get at. It says it doesn't matter if it's A Course in Miracles or something else or AA, as long as you have a spiritual life. And I think looking at those dark parts of yourself leads you to a spiritual life. That's a check. They kind of fit in.
I think so. And like there's all matters of ways to help ourselves in this, which include anything like I just named earlier, like creative expressions of drawing, exercise, movement, anything that could move some of this energy through us, including identifying and countering our quote negative personality traits. and to quit calling them bad and negative and seek to understand what put them in place to begin with and the innocence that they went in place. And then over time, through practice like this and living it out, like you and I are devotion to, devout in applying this, not just a conceptual sobriety, but an embodied sobriety to learn to be more accepting of ourselves.
Exactly.
Accepting of all the parts of myself instead of denying parts of ourselves. It also then helps us to understand the challenges that we have are part of human learning processes. It's actually not personal against us. The way our parents was not personal against us. It was the way humanity unfolds itself. It therefore will give us more understanding and compassion for other people when they're taking their turn through the challenges of life. It also means, I believe, facing traumas, facing the traumas that we've lived and had, facing grief and allowing grief to have its life, losses, other challenging emotions. So to let be, swing wide the door for the full range of emotion instead of toxic positivity and pretending that we feel a certain way when we don't, which is an abandonment of self, a rejection of some aspect of ourselves when we pretend that we feel a way that we don't. And it can motivate us then to take different actions and to be less self-hating and self-recriminating and masochistic to us. So dream analysis, journaling, psychoanalysis, prompting, therapies, exercise. I mean, there's no way to, no end to the ways that can be beneficial in doing that.
They're all good. They're all good. And the other thing too with me is there are some things, character defects or psychological problems that I embrace in a way because I used to work on control. Oh, very controlling. I have to work on being controlling. And then I realized, no, it was more about perfection. And why was that? Because I think if everything is where it's supposed to be, I will be safe. It makes me feel safe. Okay. So I did a lot of work on that. And the funny thing is, like my husband will empty the dishwasher, which I don't want him to do because I want certain glasses over here and the cups over here. Poor man. And I tell him, don't do it because look where you put the glasses. They don't belong there. They belong here. But I embrace that. It's part of my personality. It's not hurting anybody, and it makes me feel safe. I like a neat, organized surrounding.
Absolutely, honey. And the crux of it is how to have more conscious neutrality so that when the glasses aren't where you prefer them to be, how you can be less triggered by that. So I have preferences. I can't help that I have preferences, and I don't want to get any more addicted to the preferences than I already am because it's not a question of if the glasses are going to show up somewhere I don't want them. It's just a matter of when.
I just put them where they belong after he does it. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to argue with them or get mad at them. I joke about
Well,
it.
that's its own upgrade, honey. The
That's
fact that you can do it without being mad, blaming, guilting him, shaming him, trying to coach him, teach him. Didn't you hear me? I've told you over and over and over again, just to say they're not where I want to be. They're not where I want them to be. I'm going to put them where I want to be because I feel better when they're there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like Felix. Remember they had the Odd Couple, Felix and Oscar. So he's Oscar and I'm Felix. But it's okay. It works. It works because we talk and we're tender and loving and not non-judgmental of each other. We're both in the program, and he's very spiritual. He does meditation all the time, and thank God I'm with the right person. That makes a big difference,
Well, you asked earlier in the interview about tips for even novice or somebody that's not explored this maybe, and going slowly, I think, is one of them. Like, that you go into it knowing I don't know what I'm going into. It's like going into a dark black cave with a little pin light.
Mhm.
Like I'm going in here to look around to see what's in here. And to be mindful that it may be like a landmine, that I may get triggered by going into here. So some of the things we find in the repressed, unconscious, subconscious shadow aspects of ourselves can be very upsetting and be very difficult to face. So that's why to have a witness or an analyst or somebody, a sponsor, a therapist, or somebody to go with you into some of this deeper work, and absolutely practicing self-care and compassion when these thoughts and feelings and beliefs and images and memories and all of that come up, to slow down and be self-caring and compassionate with self. And my superpower, one of my superpowers, and especially applied to shadow work, is to go into this aspect of myself with a spirit of curiosity. Curiosity. And like, I don't know what's here, but I sincerely want to see what's here, what's been hurt, what's been disowned. And I sincerely want to bring all the healing I can to it. So it's the opposite of trying to manipulate it, control it, get it to grow up, wear its big girl panties. Instead of, I want to go in here curious about what happened, how it got in place in the first place, and what could possibly unburden it in some way.
Yes. We did a retreat, well, more than one, but the one retreat that you did, you had a list of things. They all started with the letter C. Do you know what I'm talking about? What was that?
Well, those are the 8 C's of self-leadership, which are referencing IFS, which stands for internal family systems. And it's dealing with exactly what we're dealing with here today,
Yeah.
in that these parts of us that have been disowned and denied are waiting for us to come back for them. So this 8 C's then of us, of a higher self-leadership, includes the things that I presented there, which is to go into shadow work, for example, with the greatest sense of calmness I can, a serenity approach, regardless of what the circumstances are, to do my best to go about it serenely. So more calm. So C, calm, clarity, an ability to perceive situations with less distortion, with less interpretation, to recognize my own preconceptions, my own biases, and to seek a different understanding for it. So clarity leading, curiosity, which I spoke to, a strong desire to learn something, to learn about a situation, to learn about the shadow side, to learn about what put it in place and what may unburden it some. Compassion, to be open-heartedly present to all the aspects of myself, everything that's been put aside in the shadow, and to go about it with some level of confidence based on how old I am, what abilities I have, and that I'm not a child anymore, and that I do, after this many decades of living, have some skill, some solid foundation that I can go confidently into these places of the shadow and work with them, instead of I'm not approaching them as my child aspect.
Mm.
Courage, the strength, even in the face of challenge or perceived challenges or perceived dangers, to take an action towards something that I've been hostage to. It's the courage to look at what I've not been willing to look at before. Creativity, which is the use then of resources, imagination, skill, perception shifting, anything that I can bring to the situation to generatively learn. Creativity, to create a different solution for how I've been with this, which I would say then to interrupt the patterning of this.
Yes.
And then a connectedness, a clear, cared for, developed state of feeling that knows beyond anything, that knows in not only belief, but in certainty that I'm part of a larger organism, that I'm one part of a larger organism, a larger life, that I'm one part of something much bigger than me. And that my connection with that life that's expressing me will give me a different grounds for looking at these parts of me that I have disowned. So those are the 8 C's.
Yes, I love them. I have them written down somewhere. I really loved when you did that part in the retreat. And then I've since done a podcast on curiosity is a wonderful trait, because it is. And I'm that type of person. You know, if I don't know something, I'm going to go right on. And I love the internet for that reason. Go right on
Well,
there.
I just wrote a newsletter that leads with that. So this, if people want to go to marthacreek.com, they can enroll in the newsletter. It comes out the first day of every month. And the title is To Develop a Sense of Curiosity as a Superpower, Less Judgment and More Curiosity. And I put a scene in there from the lessons of Ted Lasso.
I love that show. You led me to that show.
It was a series. It's still very moving to me. I learned so much about it. And it's got a great examples in spades, examples of the power of the shadow and of the shadow aspects, and how people met their own shadows and navigated them through choice, through free will, if there is free will, through determining how I'm going to be different in a situation, regardless of my traumatic responses. So yes, there's trauma, and yes, I'm going to choose again how to be with these triggers differently. And at times I won't be able to control some of it. But that scene about curiosity is one of my favorite scenes, where they're going to throw darts. They're throwing darts, and there's a big bet on the line.
Yes.
And this man just assumes that he's going to win because he's all that in a bowl of biscuits.
Yeah.
And Ted Lasso ends up winning. And he said, for example, if you had been just a little bit curious, you would have asked questions like, hey, Ted, have you played a lot of darts in your life? Hey, Ted.
Yeah.
Because you didn't bring any curiosity to it.
The whole premise of that show is so wonderful. And I told my son-in-law about it, and he had seen it, and then he fell in love with it. And then my grandson watched it, and my daughter. And yeah, there's so many messages in their comedy. It is a comedy, but it is so motivational and inspirational. So thank you for that, because you're the one that told me about it. So we all have our little shadows, and talking to other people is the most important thing. You can't, because you can't just keep everything in. I tried that, didn't work. That leads to addiction and poor choices, and sometimes death, you know. And it could be, you could go to church and talk to your minister. You could be in a spiritual community like I am, Unity of Palm Beaches. You can go to AA meetings, have a sponsor, go to a counselor, which I do too, because I need a lot of help. I have to do all of those things. And also, I think, to take the time for yourself, which is something difficult, especially if you are with a partner. And I have become a caregiver of a partner. So I love him very much, but he has become a lot of work lately. And guess what? I go get my nails done, or I go schedule a facial or a massage, because that's what you got to do. You know, you have to love yourself, take care of yourself, do good things and fun things. And I go for coffee or lunch with a girlfriend. All of that's important. So the shadow work shouldn't sound scary. It does sound scary sometimes to people that don't know about it. But it's actually, like we said, looking at our negative qualities and kind of realizing why we have them and working on it. And one last thing I'll ask you. A lot of people are into studying chakras, and I'm very new at it. But is there a chakra that is associated with the shadow?
I think they all are.
Oh,
There-
okay. All
There's
right.
no, I think they're all affected. I mean, the root chakra typically looks at things about belonging. And
Yeah,
often in some cases, we feel like we were dropped in here like an alien. And how did I end up in this family? And why me in this family? And that. And then second chakra work is around this persona of being in relationships, being attractive, and what we're wired for procreation, and how we relate even in our professions and things like that. So there's shadow work, and the solar plexus is about our own personal power and
yeah.
lack of power. I don't feel powerful. The heart of I don't feel loved, I'm not lovable. And even up into the throat, the chakras here of the shadow of I can't say anything. Nobody
Right.
listens to me. I can't
Right.
say what I really mean.
I
And right
have.
on into the third eye, into the even the crown chakra of doubting whether I'm divine or not. Is there a God? What does it all mean? Is hell and heaven real? So there's no chakra that's free from shadow aspects as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Because I had read say the sacral. I can't pronounce it. S-A
Sacral,
sacral.
sacral.
Yeah, which is down at the bottom, right? Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So anyway, we're getting a run out of time as usual. And it's interesting you mentioned about aliens because I'm researching my newest book and it has to do with the concept of star seeds, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with. So we'll have to talk about that someday.
Yeah.
I'm finding it very interesting. I really believe that I might be a star person. And I bring that I'm going to mix the two things, my life, my medical problems, and the concept. So that should be fun. Well, thank you so much. And I think we pretty much gave what they needed to know about it. And I'm going to have you again soon, Martha. Thank you so much. And everybody, marthacreek.com. Don't forget.
Blessings to you, everybody listening. Yeah. And get in touch. That latest book, the Presence and Potential book, just made it to Audible. So if people want to listen to that, the latest book that I put out, it's on Audible the first time or just this week. So
Awesome. Great talking to you.
thanks for having me here, honey.
Oh, honey, I love you.